Yo, 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 what's up? It's your boy, Coach Myers, and this is the Wrestling Strength Podcast, brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. For all your supplement needs, go to maxeffortmuscle.com. And we are live here at the Max Effort Muscle HQ, and I got a very special guest today. Now, I know I could probably say this is a man who needs no introduction, but since this is a show, I should probably introduce him, right? So my guy, Kollin Moore, four-time All-American for The Ohio State University, three-time Big Ten champ, multiple-time world medalist, at the junior U23 level, and most recently Olympic Alternate and World Team Trials Alternate. Kollin, what's up, man?
Not much. Feeling good.
Feeling good?
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, while we're on the subject, why don't we talk – let's just come right out of the gate with a banger. Let's talk about the World Team Trials. We're only a couple weeks removed from it. Kind of give me your general thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was a good tournament. I felt like, I was as prepared as I had ever been, and then first match, pretty quick match, 10-0 tech.
That's what we like to see.
Yeah.
Quick ones
those
right out the gate.
Those are what you want. But it was, I guess I should also start with my first time down at 92 kilos, which is like 203. This is the first time I've weighed that much in close to like a year and a half since I was in college.
Well, you think our entire focus since you graduated was to turn you into a legit 97 kilo guy.
Yeah.
So then it was like, all right, we were this close to the Olympic trials. So then you had to kind of back down for the world trials. All right. So you're down to 203.
Yeah. So that was, cutting weight again was interesting, but not too difficult. So I didn't feel like that really played any factor into my wrestling. But then second match I had Hidley. That was an interesting match.
It looked like a fist fight to me.
Yeah, it felt like it too. Yeah. So he's just a tough kid to wrestle. He wrestles really hard. But luckily See,
I'm not any good at wrestling, but I feel like if I was, I would wrestle like him. I would just be a meathead and just try to club you to death.
Yeah,
that would be me if I was any good. Hidley.
Yeah, I mean he's very good at underhooks and just he everything he does felt like he was throwing a punch at you, which didn't feel great.
So that was a tough match in the quarters.
Yeah, ended up pulling that out. Some experience came in handy there, and I felt like I was in a lot better shape too. So my shape felt very good. I felt like I could wrestle really hard, stay in it for all 6 minutes. And then semis, Nate Jackson, who's, very good. Actually, he's ranked number one. He was ranked number one in the world, UWW point ranking system.
Yeah, so, I saw that. And how did that happen? Did he have a big win overseas, or how did he get that ranking?
So he's just competed a lot overseas, and so
it was kind of like a cumulative thing of you placed at X amount of tournaments and he accumulated enough points or whatever.
Yeah, so he had just had more points than most people at 92 kilos. I think he wrestled at Pan Am's at 92. He placed, he took bronze in Poland, and then a few more tournaments before that. So he was actually ranked first in the world.
Yeah.
But jammed my neck pretty good in that match, about almost at the end of the first period. So that was pretty scary. I remember thinking I broke my neck. So that was not a fun feeling, because a lot of thoughts go through your mind,
right, when
you're laying on the mat. Like, I legit thought I broke my neck. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but luckily got it to like loosen up a little bit, and like I said, my conditioning was just kind of there, and he kind of died off at the end of the match, and I ended up coming back and winning by 6, I think, something like that. So that was good to just tough one out. It definitely helps your confidence, and because you train really hard all the time, and for that to me was just a thing of okay, the training was worth it. It paid off.
All right, I'm gonna kind of intercede here and talk to you about my perspective of it. As being your strength coach, I'm watching. Now, I don't know if you've really talked about this, publicly, but I knew that you were hurt going into the tournament.
Yeah.
You were a little bit banged up. Your shoulder's been bothering you. You've had some issues with your neck. And, so then when I seen you get hurt in the semis, number one, I didn't think you were going to be able to finish that match. But then when you did and you were able to kind of pull it out and get that win, even though you were clearly hurt, I'm watching thinking, you know what? He shouldn't even wrestle in the finals. He should just default out. That's what I was thinking. Now, I'm not as tough as you, and I'm not in the situation, but I'm watching thinking, and knowing that you were hurt leading up to it, I'm thinking like, you shouldn't even wrestle in the finals. Now you got, Jaden Cox, who's the best in the world. He's been the best in the world a couple years running. I believe that you can beat him, but to beat someone like that, you have to be at your best.
Yeah.
So how did you feel kind of knowing that? Because obviously you go into every match believing that you can win.
Yeah.
But for you as a competitor, you have to know against someone like that, you need to be like on your game if you're going to, pull the upset, so to speak. What was your mindset kind of going out of the semis, knowing that you got to wrestle a guy like Cox 2 out of 3?
Yeah, it was very interesting because I really couldn't turn my neck left at all. I couldn't turn my head to the left at all. But luckily, like some USA Wrestling trainers came to my hotel room that night and worked on it for like an hour. And then they gave me some like muscle relaxers and stuff.
They were all legal, by the way.
Yeah. It was all USA Wrestling doctors. But I remember, I forget who asked me. I think it might have been Logan or something. The next morning, they were like, "So, what do you think? Like, are you gonna wrestle?" And I like the thought of not wrestling hadn't even crossed your mind. Really entered my mind. I was like, really not even thought about it. And that kind of like, I don't know, that kind of surprised me a little bit because it's like I said, up to that point, I really hadn't thought about not wrestling. Like,
so when he said that to you, it was like really a shock.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize like that was a thing. Like I didn't know, because I almost felt bad too, because I was like, I came back, I beat the guy in the semis. What am I gonna do? Just not wrestle? And then like, I just crushed that dude's dream,
right?
To just forfeit in the finals. Like,
yeah,
I at least got to wrestle. Like if I wasn't gonna wrestle in the finals, I might as well just forfeited the match in the semis. From my perspective, because I would have been really mad if someone beat me and then didn't wrestle the next match.
Especially the way you won too, kind of at the last second.
Yeah.
The last maybe 10, 20 seconds or whatever. I think you got the takedown and laced him up or gutted him. I can't remember, but
yeah. But it was definitely, I didn't feel great going out to the match just because in warm-ups I couldn't really do much. Really just trying to like loosen up my body, just because other than my neck, you still have bumps and bruises all over the place, because you wrestled a full day, the whole day before. So really just trying to like get warm, sweat, but not really put my neck under too much distress. And for someone like Jaden, it's very hard to get to his legs and score on him regardless. But then I've been pretty nervous to shoot leading up to the trials, just because a lot of times, like it happened in the semis, I would get that stinger in my neck. So it was definitely difficult. But I will say, in moments like that, the kind of adrenaline and like, I think I do a pretty good job of, clearing my mind. Like when you're out in the match, I never remember thinking about my neck in the match until it would get like hurt. And then obviously it was like, oh, this sucks. But
well, I think that's something that's hard for a lot of people to do, because really at that point, once you're in it, if you are thinking about your neck, all that's going to do is inhibit your performance.
Yeah.
So if you're able to kind of turn that off, that's probably one of the reasons why you're able to, compete at a high level, is because a lot of people cannot do that.
Yeah. So I was just, I go through my mantras and my sayings before the match and stuff. And I think that did a good job of helping me clear my head. And then it really is. It's a very big moment. So you're just kind of, if you're thinking about a lot of stuff, you're not going to win the match. So I wasn't thinking about it too much in the match, honestly. A couple spots where it got jammed again, definitely sucked. But no, I think I still wrestled them well, but I came out with clear things to work on, which is always nice. Because a lot of times you wrestle somebody, even though I didn't score, a lot of times you just get dominated, and it's like you don't really have anything pinpointed on what went wrong. It was just like, he's just better.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt good in the fact that I came out right away after the match and knew
what you need to improve
two
on.
things that I was like, okay, this is what I need. So one is obviously finishing on Jaden. He's very, very good defensively. And then two is defense. So always defensive, more so in the hand fight. I know anytime I reached up with my right arm too much, that's how he scored on me both matches. And that's how I got scored on in Poland too. Okay. So right after the match, that's kind of the two things I was like, told Logan, like this is what we need to work on.
I mean, it's some really good awareness to be able to, right after the match, to be able to talk to your coach and say, all right, here's the holes I've identified, and here's what I need to change and, work towards for next time.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it was very frustrating taking second at Olympic trials, and then, 6 months later, taking second at World Team Trials.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at that. I mean, think of how many athletes would kill to be number 2 on the Olympic ladder and to be number 2 on the, the World Team ladder. So to be the clear number 2 guy at 2 weight classes in the USA is an incredible accomplishment that most wrestlers will never achieve. But being the bridesmaid or the maid of honor back to back,
yeah,
you want to get that ring,
Yeah.
So I think it's a great thing, but it's also, I think, something that can really motivate you as well.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. It leaves a very bitter taste in my mouth, in that I always default to what went wrong, like right away. So I think that's always helped me a lot, having that kind of mindset of assessing instead of like pouting.
I'll tell you,
I get mad.
I've seen you pout before too, though. It's
Yeah.
usually not after a match. It's usually in the the practice room or the weight room. I've seen you pout a little bit.
Yeah.
You've gotten better about it the older you got. But I've noticed, I've known you for a long time. I've worked with you since you came to Ohio State as a red shirt. That might have been 6-7 years ago. It's been a while now. And something I knew right away, even coming out of high school, I knew who you were, but you weren't like the this superstar 5-star recruit guy that everyone in the world knew. But I knew who you were. But the thing that stood out to me the most was like, this kid is fucking tough. He's competitive and he's tough. So let's talk about toughness for a while. I think this is something I want to, on every episode, no matter who I have on it, I want to kind of talk and dive into a little bit about, kind of toughness and where that comes from. The whole like nature versus nurture thing.
Yeah.
All right. Some people, they think they're born with it, but were they shaped by their environment? Now you come from a whole family of athletes. Let's talk about your family a little bit. So your dad, John Moore, legendary tough guy. Legendary. I mean, at least in my mind, he's legendary, right?
No, he is.
And I come from my dad was like a legendary tough guy in our little area too. So it's almost like I think of him. I think of John Moore as like the Kim Myers of your area. So tell me a little bit about John and what he was like when you were a kid, and kind of your perception of him, not just of a dad, but as being an athlete and being tough and as a coach. Think about how you looked at him as a kid.
Yeah, anyone I ever talked to at a wrestling tournament that knew my dad, like the first thing they would say was just like, your dad, we were all scared of your dad in high school. Like your dad was the biggest badass in the world. Like you should have seen him. Like, so it was just always these like tall tales about stuff my dad did in high school and how like strong and just badass he was.
Well, and as a kid, I think any young boy already thinks that their dad is Superman.
Yeah.
So like even the dads out there that are total pussies, their kids probably at one point think their dad's so tough.
Yeah.
But you have, just like I did when I was a kid, out of everyone telling you how tough your dad was and what a badass he was.
Yeah. So obviously I always wanted to emulate that. I thought it was cool. Everyone was scared of my dad, and no one would mess with my dad. Like, everyone just respected my dad so much. So obviously that was something that was a place that I wanted to get to in life. I don't know how much I really like sat down and thought about it as a little kid.
Well, as a kid, you don't really think about stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like something you're maybe cognizant of like thinking like, I mean, even just, I remember thinking, well, my dad's a weightlifter. Like, that's what I'm going to be. Like, I didn't really think of it in that way, but it was just something like I knew.
Yeah.
You know?
But I remember my dad would take us to Chanel practices growing up, where he went to high school, and Jaggers and Coach Ralph went there. And I remember just walking into the wrestling room, and the high school practice would be getting done as the youth practice would start right after. And I just remember, like, there'd be, like, sweat, like, condensed on the wall. It just looked like people were fighting in there for, like, an hour and a half. Like, it kind of scared me a little bit as a kid. Like, walking into this, like, war zone almost, and then you're ready to practice. And the high school coaches would stay from high school and help coach the youth practice right after. So, and they were all my dad's high school coaches from when he was there too. So it was a really cool experience to be kind of influenced not only by my dad, but by the people that influenced my dad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But my dad basically was always like, he would just preach hard work and just fighting. I don't know. Not like fist fighting, but just that attitude of like, you don't give up a takedown in the room. Now, he would never say it's not okay to give up a takedown. Like, he would never be pissed that I got taken down. But
getting taken down and giving up is two different things, right?
Yeah. So it was always, you never give up a takedown in the room. You fight till you're just done. You can't fight anymore. And then the third thing that I think he always said to me was, if you're the toughest guy in the room, it's time to find a new room. Mm. So that was always the message. Because, you get better, and then you kind of progress, and you start beating up on everybody in the room. And then I just remember we'd be like, okay, well, let's go to Wadsworth or something. Like, let's go to this room. And then, you'd battle in there. And then I got good in high school. And obviously, I think the toughest room in the country was Ohio State at the time. And so when I went to Ohio State, he was just like, listen, you're going to get beat up. You just got to fight every day. You got to come in. You got to know you're going to lose. And you just got to keep shooting, keep fighting in positions, and you'll get better. And that's exactly what happened.
That's it. That's exactly what happened. He predicted it.
Yeah. So him and my older brother.
Yes, you not only had the tough dad, the legendary badass John Moore, but you had an older brother too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Kurt a little bit.
So Kurt
was he the older brother that like helped you by holding your hand and bringing you along, or was he mean to you when you were little?
I
don't mean mean like in a personal way. I just mean like, was he beating up on you all the time?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it was so much like physical outside of wrestling. Well, we would get in fights, and he would beat the crap out of me. Because he's 2 years older than me. For the most part, he was always bigger. That's my excuse for why I lost all the fights. But No, he just beat me at everything. I just remember him being better at me than everything I did
Ping pong,
growing up.
everything.
It was the most frustrating thing in the entire world because I'm a very competitive person.
But so do you think that's where that competitive drive comes from, is wanting to beat Kurt? Or do you think you...
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. I mean, when you lose, I mean, basically I was losing at everything because I would hang out with my brother, and most of the time I was hanging out with my brother and his older friends.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was I getting beat by my brother, I was kind of getting embarrassed because I was losing in front of these older kids too that were there, and they weren't my brothers, so they would always kind of like poke fun at me. And then just stuff like that. It was kind of like, I think that's kind of like we were talking about nature versus nurture. I think that's like the environment that I was kind of thrust in, but I think it is kind of like what kind of person you are. If you're competitive and you are a tough person, then that can like thrust you into something good.
But maybe if you were born just kind of like as a softer person,
Yeah.
that would have just kind of maybe turned you away from sports, or,
Yeah.
you wouldn't really like hanging out with your brother because he picks on you, or it could be looked at in a totally different light as something detrimental, as opposed to something that really, shaped you into something great.
Yeah. I would try and win everything. I would try and beat my brother to a fault. I could do it. I would try everything I could. And it was probably bad at sometimes. I was like, I would get pretty dirty when we wrestled and stuff. Like I would get so frustrated. I would go to extreme measures to beat him, and I would still come up short. And it was, just learning how to navigate losing like that.
So this year at Thanksgiving, Kurt wants to play darts, and he beats you at darts. What happens? Do you get pissed? Do you turn it into a wrestling match? I mean, or is it just you take the L?
No, I've grown up. I've grown up a lot since high school and stuff. But he's still your older brother, and you're going to be in that same dynamic. You're in the house that he put a million ass whoopings on you from the time you were born. Yeah. Isn't there a part of you that does not want to lose to him still at anything? Yes. Yeah. I still obviously I want to beat him obviously a lot. But now it's like it doesn't mean as much to me now as it did when I was little, I guess. Cuz now he's like my brother. I value like spending time with him more than like beating him and stuff.
Well, maybe now because you've surpassed him physically in some ways. When did you finally slay the dragon? When could you beat Kurt in a wrestling match? Because Kurt, hey, even though he played soccer in college, was a great wrestler too. He won a state title, right? Or state runner-up, maybe state finalist.
He was 5th and 6th.
5th and sorry, I just made that up. I knew he was good though.
Yeah, my sophomore year, I made the finals. We wrestled back to back in the semis on the same mat. So I beat the returning state champ in the semis. It was a big upset. And then Kurt was wrestling this kid from like Delta or something maybe, who had beaten before. And then he was winning pretty big. And then about maybe in second or third period, he like popped a rib out of place. And wrestling is impossible with a hurt rib. So he lost that match and then medically forfeited to 6th. So that kind of sucked. It would have been cool to be in the finals with Kurt, but he was very good. I don't know if I ever beat him in like a match or a go when he was in high school. I think he had to go to college for a year and play soccer and then come back over like winter break or something, and then I could beat him. But
and do you remember like a feeling of that first time when you beat him? Do you remember kind of feeling like there was a changing of the guard almost? Like now the relationship was going to be different in some ways.
Yeah, I do. At least for me. But Kurt, he would play. He was a lot smarter than me too. So when he came back, he does a good job of like, he can lose and kind of like not care and kind of make it. He would always make it seem, anytime I did beat him at something, he would make it seem like it wasn't a big deal to him, which was frustrating.
And then
for me.
and then put it on you like you're the one making it into a big deal.
Yeah, he's like, well, yeah, I don't really. He's like, oh, I don't wrestle anymore, so like it's.
Like, oh,
I'm
good
like,
for you.
Can you just be upset? Like I was for 15 years. Can you be upset?
That really takes the sweetness out of the victory, don't it?
Yeah, it does. So
like you want them to feel the disappointment.
Yeah, it was frustrating. He would play. So not only was he better than me a lot physically, he was always, well, he's 2 years older. He was a lot smarter than me most of the time too. So he would always, anytime I would beat him after that, it was just like, no, whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, man. Like, I'm trying to get excited. Like,
right.
I'm happy, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. And I wanted him to.
You wanted him to care the way that you used to care, and
Yeah.
The reality is he doesn't care, and he also knows how much you care, so he's not going to show it to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, he is smart. I want to have him out here to have you guys do a bench off. That's what I want to see you guys compete in my world and see, because I know he's a good bench presser too, and he loves the bench.
Yeah, I'd destroy him, I think. I'd destroy him.
Kurt, if you're watching, if you're listening, he's laid down the gauntlet. He'll destroy you. Not just he'll beat you, he said he'll destroy you.
Destroy you. I'll break you.
All right, so would you say then that was he maybe your biggest influence on your style of wrestling, or was it your dad? Was it someone at Chanel? Like or was it Tervel? Who had the biggest influence on you? Look, not you then, but now as more of a finished product as a wrestler, who had the biggest influence on your style?
Probably Tervel. I mean, when I got to Ohio State, I did not have a lot of technique, I would say. I would hit like barrel rolls, and I would take a lot of bad shots. So I was just a little bit better than most people I wrestled. I mean, I wasn't bad, but like I watched some of my matches from my senior year of high school and freshman year of college, and I'm like, this is terrible.
I think you were more just relentless with your shot.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people had a hard time dealing with. They're used to someone shooting maybe twice a period or whatever. You would come out and shoot a dozen times.
Yeah.
Easily in one period. Because
I watch some high school kids now that are like, who's number one, and or some kids that come in, their freshman year and win nationals. And I just naturally kind of compare myself at that point in time to them. And I'm like, well, they were way ahead of me. But I think once Tervel got into more of a coaching role and helped me out, just fine-tune a lot of things, really, really changed my wrestling. Yeah. Tervel helped me out a lot.
Shout out to Big T Money.
Yeah, Big T.
Well, who do you think had the biggest, if you had to look back, going back to a kid, like your mindset, I guess we've kind of already talked about this, but this was a question I wanted to ask you because I've always wondered who had probably the biggest impact on your mindset as a competitor, as a wrestler, and as an athlete?
I would still say my dad, just because I think the most important thing that I've learned, or the most important thing that helps my wrestling is just that toughness factor of just like fighting people, every day, come in and just fight every position. I think my dad kind of instilled that in me at a very young age, and that's what's probably helped me the most. Like Tervel's helped me, and Tom and Jay, they've all helped me a lot mentally. Just figure out, like just the high stakes stuff, of winning and losing in big tournaments, and because they've all been there and stuff. But I think that stuff is very like fine print things that can make a difference, but like
But if you don't have the base structure
Yeah.
down, that stuff isn't going to matter.
Yeah, if I didn't have that like toughness or just like the hard work aspect that my dad, helped me out with growing up, and really a lot still to this day. I definitely would not be as good as I am.
Well, I think just that thing that you said your dad would say about, never give up a takedown in the room. I mean, it sounds like something so obvious. Obviously, you're going to get taken down.
Yeah.
But fight through every position and never give up a takedown. I mean, that's something I'm going to use with Jack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk to him about, because I'm in this position where, Jackson maybe his second year of wrestling now. He's going to club. Clay Reeves is working with him. I'm going to be coaching his team this year, his actual team here in Granville.
Let's go.
And yeah, I'm super pumped about it. And I feel like he's making good strides.
Yeah.
Jack, me and him, we've worked out together. He's a very hardworking kid, but I picture like the type of kid he is at 9 years old, very different from Kollin Moore at 9 years old. Well, first of all, he's nice.
Yeah.
He's very smart,
Okay. All right.
He's not a meathead yet. But no, I mean, the kids are different,
Yeah.
He's more similar to how I was at that age. Like, he's not a naturally hard-nosed kid. Now, like my sister-in-law's kids, so his little cousins, they're like little roughnecks. They're like always pushing each other off the chair so they fall and hit their head. And, they'll spit in your face and try to kick you in the nuts, They're just that type of kids. And that's just, they're just wired different than Jack. Now, luckily, Jack knows how to wrestle, so he beats up on them. But so he's not that type of kid. He's naturally a softer, sensitive kid. So how do I take my kid, who's like I was, not a naturally rough kid, and how do I make him tough and rough, but do it in a way I don't want to be that dad that tries to, take my kid and make him into something he's not. I want to be able to kind of show him the way and help him and challenge him, but not in a way that kind of creates a rift between him and I, and not in a way that tries to change who he is as a core person. It's tough. It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I'm going to stress to him is like, it's okay to lose, it's okay to get taken down, but you can't ever give up in a position. You can't ever give up a takedown.
Yeah.
If you lose the position, oh well. Right?
And I think something that I wish, I'm sure a lot of people told me, but growing up, I think it's important to like flip a switch when you walk into like something you're competing at. Like when you walk into practice, you flip a switch to like, okay, I'm in competitive mode now. And then, so I think for me, there was a time when I was little to where I was like, everything was a competition. Everything was like
turn it off at the dinner table.
Like people wouldn't want to play games with me. To this day, it's always like the running joke. Like my family would not want to play board games with me or like stuff like that. Because I wanted to win, and I would get really frustrated if I lost.
It would ruin the night for everyone.
Yeah.
If you lose a Monopoly.
So I wish I would have done a better job at flipping the switch. So like you walk in, or even if you walk into your job, it's like, okay, it's time to get down to business. You leave, flip the switch off, you're back to nice, caring, loving person. But got a lot better at that one. But so I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But yeah, just knowing like when you walk into the practice room, you're a different person.
So what other advice would you have for, dads like me? There are guys that are in a similar situation. They got a young kid who they're bringing into wrestling, and maybe, whether they were someone like you, a very decorated wrestler, or someone like me that only wrestled a few years. I don't have this. Because I guess let me explain. I think a problem I see with a lot of dads is they want to live through their kid. Do I want my kid to be a great wrestler? Well, of course. But I don't want it because I didn't have it. It's not one of those things where I feel like I have to prove something by making my kid a champion because I wasn't a state champion.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. So what do you think, coming from you're not a dad yet, but coming from if you count a puppy, you got a puppy, right?
Yeah, I'm a dog dad.
You're a dog dad. So, but dogs don't wrestle, so we can't use that. But coming from the aspect of, someone who grew up with a dad who was a great wrestler, came from a great wrestling tradition, you had the older brother who was a good wrestler, what advice would you give, dads like me that are young in the game to make sure they don't ruin their kid?
Yeah, I would just say make it about the effort. I think that's something my dad always did very well. Was I get yelled at a lot growing up, but it was always about my effort in the practice.
Like, did you try hard?
Or
Did you not?
I was like being lazy at home. Like I wasn't cleaning up after myself. Like I never got yelled at for not finishing the single leg or, getting beat. It was always like you did not look like you were trying out there, or you just kind of fell over there, or just little just lapses in like laziness. I get yelled at a lot for laziness, and I think that
that surprises me. Yeah,
no, not like I wasn't a very lazy kid, but anytime I was lazy, I got yelled at.
They didn't let it slide.
Yeah. Like even at home, just if you were sitting around at home for too long, it was like, why don't you go do something? Like, why don't you go outside or do something, or why don't you clean up this? But yeah, I think that was always the big thing. I would always get so surprised when my mom would yell at me though. Like after like a soccer tournament, or it would especially upset me in wrestling when she would be like, you just did not look like you were trying very hard at all.
Oh, that would sting.
And
from Julie Moore.
Coming from my mom, that was just like, I'd really like take a second and like think back, like, man, I felt like I was trying. Like my mom, like what the heck, Mom?
Isn't it weird how people's words affect you differently depending on the relationship, and you weren't used to your mom yelling at you, you know? That just reminded me of when I was a kid, or I was in like maybe junior high. I remember being at it's either a track meet or a football game, and I was freezing. It was cold out. It was late. And my Aunt Beck, my mom's sister, was there, who I love my Aunt Beck dearly. And I was just like, oh, I was shivering. I was like, oh, Aunt Beck, I'm so cold. And she just looked at me and just deadpan said, men don't shiver. And I remember just thinking like, I'm never going to shiver again. To this day, I'll never complain about being cold, because I felt like I could hear the disappointment in her voice. And I'd never heard anything like that from my Aunt Beck before. Yeah. It was like, why did she just make me feel this small, you know?
Yeah. So that especially sting when my mom would get on me for my effort. And that would always be kind of kicking the ass. But I would always remember my dad we broke down technique a lot, but it was always, that part was always very constructive. My mom would sometimes film my matches. She was a bad habit of
moving the camera around,
screaming and holding the camera this way. And that was always a big thing too. But we would watch my matches all the time after youth tournaments and stuff, but it was never like, I would get excited to watch my matches and like break them down with my dad. I would not get so excited if, for some rides home when I just knew I had like a bad practice. Like I just was not in it that day. I knew I was going to get talked to the whole way home.
See, I got some good advice from someone the other day, because I hear so many guys talk about the ride home.
Yeah.
The ride home from practice, the ride home from the match. I can't even remember who gave me this, but they said, because we were talking about, I'm going to be coaching Jack this year. They said, don't talk about anything on the car ride home. They said, whether it's coming from the match, coming from the practice, talk about anything except for wrestling. And then you can talk about it later or whatever, but they like to say, don't talk about it in the car ride. What do you think about that? Do you feel like it was helpful, or was it something you dreaded?
I think, I don't know. Looking back on it, I didn't mind it because it was like I was going to be in the car with him anyways. Like, and we just got it out of the way. So it was like, it wasn't always like a lecture, like, because it was like almost an hour car drive back from Chanel to a lot of the times. So it was never like an hour of just getting yelled at by my dad. But I think it was always good to just, I don't know, you knew when you had a bad practice, and even when you didn't, it was like, it was always a good reminder to be like, you did not look like you were trying very hard. And for me, I would have rather had it right then than, car ride, you're back, you're eating dinner, you're in a good mood again, and then you get talked to about practice that was 3 hours ago, and now you're back in it. Like,
I guess that's a good way to look at it.
Okay, sorry. So I get that. I mean, I'm not saying that's the approach that works for everyone, but I think for me, that makes the most sense. Like, just get out of the way, and then the rest of the night, act like it's not a big deal. Like, just move on from it.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I can see both sides of it.
Yeah.
And again, maybe it comes back to the type of kid,
Mm-hmm.
With you already being this maniac, competitive little roughneck, maybe it worked good for you.
Yeah.
Maybe if I kind of yell at Jack the whole car ride home, he's gonna cry, and then he'll go up to his room and won't want to eat dinner or something. So I'll have to be careful with that one, but it's definitely good food for thought. And I always like to hear the different perspectives. Now, kind of changing gears here a little bit. With this being the Wrestling Strength Podcast, of course, we're talking about wrestling, and of course, we got to talk about strength training at some point, which we'll get to. But that's not all I want to talk about. Every time I have someone on, I want to talk about maybe some other aspect of their life, so what I want to talk about with you is something I know that you and I have in common, and that's music. Now, if you're listening, you're probably thinking, okay, everyone likes music, well, of course, everyone likes music.
Yeah.
But I think that, you and I have been to a few concerts together. I know that music's a big part of your life, and that, you like to play guitar. You're always going to shows. I love to go to concerts. There's just like something to it more than just going to see a band I like or hear songs that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about it a lot lately because the summer's almost over, and I like going to concerts in the summer. I like to be outside, and I don't go to as many concerts in the winter. So I've been kind of reflecting on, going out to Red Rocks this summer, and going up to Nelson's Ledges, some of these other shows I went to. And I think that maybe part of the appeal for me is that kind of group consciousness that you have that's similar, like when you go to a Buckeye football game, or you go to the Big Tens to watch the Buckeyes, where like you're not just watching the event, but you kind of feel this connection with the other people there. The difference being at a concert, you're all cheering for the same team, So let's talk about, concerts a little bit. Maybe is this a release from you or for you from, sports and training and everything else, or why is it such a big deal to you?
Yeah. Well, I think music is just always been like something I've been like really attracted to, and I think it goes back to the car ride a lot. Like I learned a lot of music because we would drive in the car so much to practice or competitions and stuff like that. And then when me and my brother got older, and we could, like, iTunes was a thing, and you could go and find new music outside of the radio a lot easier than like going to like record stores and stuff.
What about Napster? Are you old enough to remember Napster?
I was not on Napster. I remember LimeWire.
Yeah, same thing.
Yelled
same
at
thing.
a lot for LimeWire.
Oh yeah, ruined your computers.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I think that it brought me and my brother together a lot. We were always finding new music and stuff. But I remember the first time I went to a concert was, I was telling you this earlier, it was the Black Keys and Cage the Elephant. And I've never been like more excited for anything in my life. I was like, finally get to see these guys. And like you said, just the energy, everyone is in a good mood. Everyone's so excited to be there.
It's so different than watching the video on YouTube or seeing it on your phone, or just hearing the song on the radio.
You're just fully like immersed in it. They got the light show going on. And then I think one of the coolest things about like live music too is you just get to, every band, at first I would get kind of disappointed if it sounded a little different than what was on my phone. Like, oh, they sang, because I would always be singing, and if they sang it a little differently and I sounded off, or like it sounded weird from what I was expecting, I would get like a little upset. But I think the more I started to like play guitar or go to concerts, the more I appreciated them like putting a little spin on it every time I would go to see him.
Well, the thing to think about too is when you hear the finished product on iTunes, the music could have been layered together. They didn't just play that song live right there. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that post-production. So when you hear it live, that really is the real version of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really them playing the music that they wrote, and more or less, you know, even if they change it a little bit, I mean, that's how it's intended to sound.
Yeah. So, and they do, when people do covers of other songs, I go nuts. I love that. I think it's like the coolest thing ever. I remember Zach Brown Band did a cover of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy did the guitar solo on an electric violin. And I was like, my mind's blown. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, so I'm kind of like a little nerdy about like the technical side of things too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll watch the guitar player and like try and figure out what chords they're playing and stuff like that, or just like kind of figure out how they're making some of the sounds, because it's very, very cool to just watch them. Because when I play guitar, I have to be sitting down, I have to be
Total
staring
concentration.
at it. It's very frustrating, and these guys are running around the stage playing it behind their head, like jumping up and down, and to me that's just like the coolest thing, watching them do something I really struggle with complete ease, and like it's very cool experience for me.
See, I don't, you know, I've never really played the guitar. I played the drums a little bit growing up, but I don't really know enough about the technical side of music to appreciate that part of it. But what I do love is when you get to see a band play a cover, because it's something that probably no one's heard before.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be available on iTunes or anything like that. And it makes you love that song, even though if it's not a song you love. Like I remember one of the first times I saw my guys Tropodelic play, they played a cover of Waterfalls by TLC.
Yeah.
Now, I would never say like, oh, I love Waterfalls by TLC, but they played it. We were like, this is fucking awesome. They were jamming it, you know?
Uh-huh.
You know, I was just, I mentioned Red Rocks. I was out there to see my guys Slightly Stupid. They played a cover of, they played that One Love song by U2.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome song, even though I guess I never really appreciated it that much until I really like, I'm at Red Rocks and I'm in the vibe and in the moment listening to the words of it and everything. And then they kind of played like a reggae version of PIMP by 50 Cent. So it's like it's like you get these unique performances that you're never going to see anywhere else. You only see it there in the moment. Mm-hmm. And of course, like a dumbass, I probably like storied 15 seconds of it. Like, and then after you do it, I'm like, why did I even do that? Like no one's going to watch that and like it, or, you know, even if I go back and look at it, like it doesn't do justice or anything.
No.
So you need to just kind of be in the moment and enjoy it.
Yeah, I've always struggled with that, because I want to capture it on video to like remember it, but I'm always disappointed when I watch the video the next day, because I'm like, it's not, you just end up missing the feeling of being at the concert.
I read something, and I mean this might sound kind of obvious, but they did this study, and I think it did reference concerts. It gave concerts one of the examples, but it said that phones are changing the way that our minds create memories. So like, let's say I'm in a concert and they're playing this song and I get it out. I'm like, oh, I got to store this, and I record it a little bit. The way the memory is processed in my head is I remember the act of recording. It. I don't actually remember, you know, the sights and sounds and the smells of that moment don't get recorded. Me going here is what gets remembered and embedded in my brain. So
that's depressing.
It is kind of depressing, because then you have like, it's quality of a memory.
Yeah.
There's the other little details that we all miss out on. So that is something I struggle with just in all aspects of life, is trying to put my phone away more. And I feel like I did a pretty good job at it at the concert this summer. I'd maybe get one or two clips just for a memento.
Yeah.
But I mean, you watch some people at these concerts or even at sporting events or anything, they have their phones out the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? You could have just watched it on someone else's story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and one thing, I don't know if you're this guy too, but I went to one concert where I was like pretty far away from the band, and it was in an arena too. So I was like third level, and everyone was kind of like sitting down and kind of just doing one of these to the concert. And I I was like, well, this sucks.
Yeah, you don't
no
feel
one's
no
getting
energy.
into it. Like, so any concert I go to now, I have to be like on the floor or like in the pit or something.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a different experience. Like you feel the amp on your chest. Like,
No, it's a huge part of it. I mean, look, we were at the Granville Blues Fest a couple weeks ago. Taj Mahal's playing. He's like a blues legend. I'm there with my kids, my dad, my wife. You know, my dad has permanent ringing in the ears, so he has earplugs in, and we're way far back.
Yeah.
We're so far back, you can hear the music, but you can't feel anything.
Yeah.
My kids now are at the age, they think I'm uncool in public, so they don't want to, like, walk around with me. You know, right? And so, like, I'm trying to get them to go up there with me. And I'm like, Mia, come on. We used to come to the Blues Fest when we would dance up in the front. She's like, some of my friends might be here. They might see me. No lie. That's how she's acting.
Oh, no.
Jack's just like, whatever. He wants to hang out with my dad. He don't want to go up there with me. So I'm asking my wife, and she's like, no, it's too loud up there. I'm like, that's the point. It has to be too loud. So they don't get it. You know, I think my dad used to get it, you know, but he has that thing, the tinnitus in his ears now, so he really can't.
Yeah,
but
it's a little different.
so anyway, I had to kind of leave them, and for 20 minutes I went up front. I just had to feel, you know, up there I had to vibe a little bit, but I had to feel the bass in my chest. Actually, one of my favorite lines ever in the Beastie Boys. How you like me now? Wait, no, that ain't it. I got to ask you how you like the feel of the bass in your face in the crowd, you know? Because it's a feeling to it when you can feel the music when you're up front. And I'm up there, of course, there's some like old 60-year-old hippies dancing around and stuff. And it just, you feel in the moment more.
Yeah, it's crazy. You see some of the videos of like DMX at Woodstock or just like famous, like huge concerts where there's like tens and thousands of people. Like you can't see the end of the crowd.
Right.
Like that to me is got to be one of the coolest feelings like ever. I've been to like one music festival kind of like that, but it was on the beach. But yeah, that's like, it's just such a unique experience.
No doubt. Well, now I want to go to a concert, so we're going to have to find one to go to before the weather turns.
Yeah.
All right. You know, kind of before we sign off here, I think we covered a lot of ground, but I want to do this thing here at the end of each show. I'm going to call it the quick hitters. Maybe I'll call it something else, but I'm going to have kind of some stock questions, real short ones, that I want to ask everyone that comes on. All right. Now, this first one, and I'll tell you why I'm asking it, is because it's such a generic question, generic train of thought, but almost every wrestling parent or coach that I talk to, they ask me some form of this. They'll say like, what's the best exercise for wrestlers? Or what should wrestlers do to get stronger? You know, it's such kind of a generic thing, but I get what they're trying to say. And I have an answer that I tell them, but what do you think is either the best exercise for wrestling, or what do you feel like, you know, in the weight room has helped you for wrestling more than any other exercise?
Man, I hate to say it, but I think deadlift.
Boom.
I really do.
Your heart wants to say bench, but you know that's not the answer,
I
right?
want to say bench or curls or something, but I think deadlift, and you asked me this earlier, I was kind of thinking about it. The more I look back, like there has been kind of a correlation between my deadlift and me getting better at wrestling. When I came to Ohio State, I don't think like 405 was a lot.
You weren't even at 405. I still remember. You were 365 when you reported.
Yeah,
which is, you know, that's not a weak deadlift, but you know, for it to be a college 197 in the Big Ten, if you can only deadlift 365, you're gonna have a hard time holding position and finishing shots on big, strong guys.
Yeah, so that's what I think the biggest thing is. Yeah, it works. Your low back and just that position of not only lifting stuff up, but just staying strong when people are pulling on your neck and your head. And it's such an important position to be strong in. Just being comfortable, being like bent over and lifting. And just that low back into your hamstring muscles is always engaged in a wrestling match the whole time.
Yeah. I'm going to go a step further and say it's going to be impossible to feel strong as a wrestler and be weak on the deadlift. It's going to be next to impossible.
Yeah.
Or at least to feel stronger than someone who is a very strong deadlifter. If you're weak at the deadlifter, you don't do it.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent answer, because that's the answer I always give when people say what's the most important exercise for wrestlers. I always say the deadlift. Now we might be cheating here a little bit because you are like my disciple in the weight room, but you had the freedom to say anything else. And I told you earlier, I said, hey, you can say whatever you want, just be prepared to defend.
I wanted to say bench. I really did. But
well, if we ask what's your favorite, then you could say bench.
Yeah, it's bench.
Bench press. I mean, who doesn't love a good bench press?
Yeah.
All right, next quick hitter. What do you think is the one, and this could be either a workout or an exercise, but what do you think that coaches need to stop doing? High school coaches, college coaches, maniac dads that have a weight room and mat in their basement. What do they need to quit doing with their wrestlers?
That's tough. I think a lot of people like to go crazy on like conditioning after a practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think the practice should just be really hard. There's a time for conditioning. So anytime we might do some conditioning after a practice, but it's never to the point of like it's never anything crazy. And most of the time we do our really hard conditioning, it's after
a spar, after a drill or something.
Yeah, it's a morning technique thing. But I've always been under the impression like you shouldn't be able to sprint too long after a wrestling practice.
Right.
Because you just try to kill yourself in a wrestling. Like, I'm exhausted after a wrestling practice. So a lot of times. I remember,
not to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I remember, Jack's first year of wrestling, there was one of the practices where they had a really hard practice. And this is youth, at the time I can't remember, he was 6, 7 years old. And then the coach had them running sprints after sprints and finally, Jack's like having an asthma attack. I said, go sit on the wall. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm all for sprints. I'm all for conditioning. But they just wrestled like a bunch of live, and now you're running sprints for 10 minutes. Like, it made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, there's a time to do that. And, at this point, you're just making the kids hate it. Half the kids were crying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are we doing this for?
Yeah. So I'd say that, and just I don't know. That was the one that just popped up in my head when you asked me before, and what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I had a kid that I work with. His dad, sent me a thing that he did the other day. I'd sent him some track workouts to do. Some 400s and stuff. He went. He did the 400. He's like, and then he lunged a quarter mile, and then he ran 2 more miles. And I said, that's 3 different workouts right there. Yeah. Like, if you run the sprints hard enough, you don't need to do anything after that. Mm-hmm. And if you could maybe make an argument for, hey, I'm going to, run 2 miles after lunging a quarter mile. But in my mind, just run the 2 mile. If you want to do, a hard baseline conditioning, run the 2 miles harder. Yeah. If you can still run 2 miles after the quarter mile, that 2 miles is not going to be very valuable to you. Yeah. So I think that, doing tough conditioning but being strategic about it is important. I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of coaches don't have a handle on that. They always think more is better. More is better. No pun intended there. But you have to be smart about it, and you have to pick when to do that hard conditioning after practice. Yeah.
There's always value in doing hard things, but I think as much as possible there should be some sort of intention with the hard thing. So like, you shouldn't just be, you shouldn't be doing it too much to where you're just like doing hard stuff to do hard stuff. That doesn't make sense.
Well, what happens is a lot of people they do so much hard stuff that none of the hard stuff is done hard. Yeah. They're not putting a lot of effort into it. Yeah. Like, you're not really running sprints now. You're just kind of like running a little bit faster than you normally would. So you're not getting out of it what you should be getting out of it.
Yeah. And I like being explained what's like being benefited, I guess. So like,
yeah, any athlete should be able to ask their coach, whether it's their strength coach or a wrestling coach, and ask it the right way. Don't just say, why are we doing this? But say, what are we improving with this workout? What should I be focusing on to improve? Yeah. Am I trying to get faster? Am I trying to, Am I just trying to build my endurance? Like, what are we doing here?
And sometimes it might be we're just doing it because it's going to suck and you need to get mentally tough. And that's okay every now and then. But it's not like it shouldn't be just a constant thing. You're just doing hard stuff all the time for like no reason. There should always be like a purpose behind most stuff you do. And I think a lot of times coaches just know that they're supposed to be like kids have to do hard things. So they just throw the kitchen sink at them. And it's like,
they know running's
okay,
good, so we need to run.
Yeah. What was the point of that?
Right.
Like, what did they get out of that? And sometimes it is just, like I said, sometimes it could be just all right, they need to get a little mentally tougher. So like one practice, it might just be, we're just going to do it because it's hard. But most of the time it's, they need more endurance in the hand fight. So we're going to hand fight after practice. Stuff like that.
All right. Last quick hitter. What is, if you can narrow it down to one, what's one of your most favorite memories workout wise? What's like a favorite, whether it was something crazy you did or it was in a crazy location or the workout partners or whatever? Give me one of your most memorable workouts. This could be wrestling based. It could be lifting. It could be anything.
I would say one of the most like interesting and like somewhat rewarding workouts I've done, and I know you just did it, is the incline in Colorado Springs. And I think we were out at the training center. We woke up at like 3:30 in the morning because we try to get on it before the sun came up too much because it gets pretty hot. So just waking up with all the guys in the van, driving down. And this is the first time I've done it too. I've heard all the stories. So I'm like,
there's a lot of build up to it.
Nervous. I'm like, this is going to suck really bad. But it's, it's all the Ohio State guys. I think it was like me, Miles, Kyle, Logan, Nato, Kevin. And I think we were trying to get Joey to come to Ohio State at the time. So he came with us.
That's like a who's who of the last 10 years of Ohio State wrestling right there.
Yeah. So that was just, I think that was just pretty cool. It's really hard. And when you get to the top, it's just the sun was rising.
The scenery is unbelievable.
It's just really cool. So I think.
And it's extremely difficult.
Yes. Yeah. It sucked.
Yeah. I think all of my workouts that I think of like that, that are very memorable to me, they're usually in some place that's beautiful, and they're also extremely difficult. So there's like this juxtaposition of, extreme suffering and just immense natural beauty. And that's life, right? That's wrestling.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't think we can find a better place to stop there.
Love it.
Kollin, I appreciate you, man. So anyone who's listening, where should they find you? Where should they follow you? If you want to give a shout out to your sponsors, that type of thing, boom, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at more_of_Kollin. So, and then as always, big shout out, Max Effort Muscle. Use your stuff all the time. maxeffortmuscle.com. Get your stuff there. Rudis, they have the best wrestling gear out there. I'm actually going there today to get
the new running shoes. Look amazing. Boom.
Get your journeys.
Product placement right there.
They just came out with the new Alphas wrestling shoes. Look sweet. Going to get some of those, and they're always coming up with something new. We might be a little collaboration here soon.
You may have heard the rumor here first. We won't disclose anything else in that, but love the guys at Rudis. Actually, I got their socks on right now. And I told someone the other day, because they were saying, man, all you ever wear is Max Effort Old School. I said, well, those are my brands. I said, the only other brand that I'll wear is Rudis.
Yeah.
Those are my guys.
That's all you need.
That's all you need. All right, Kollin. Thanks again, man.
Sweet. Thank you.